You don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your habits. Best motivational speech by Simon Sinek. The small things, the routines no one sees, the standards you keep when no one is watching. And that's exactly where greatness is built. Not in the moment of the test, but in the moments leading up to it. Today, let's talk about why your habits, not your hopes, decide your future. If you want to rise in the big moments, you must train in the small moments. The world will not give you time to prepare. Life will not warn you before a challenge arrives. When the moment comes, your body, your mind, your spirit, they will default to your habits. So ask yourself, what am I repeatedly doing? What patterns am I reinforcing? Are they leading me to the future I want or the future I fear? Success isn't built in a day, and neither is failure. Both are built in repetition. So choose your repetition wisely. Build habits that reflect your values. Build routines that reinforce who you want to become. Because when the occasion arrives, and it will, the question won't be, can you rise to it? The real question will be, did you prepare for it? We all want to be better. We want to be stronger, more focused, more successful, more disciplined. And in that desire, many people rely on hope. They hope that when the moment comes, they will naturally act with courage. They hope their motivation will rise when they need it most. But hope is not a strategy. Hope creates a comforting illusion, not a solid foundation. The truth is that the outcomes we admire in others, their calmness, their consistency, their power, aren't fueled by hope. They are built on systems. Systems are the invisible architecture that supports your future. They are the routines, structures, and habits that ensure you keep moving forward even when you don't feel like it. When you build a system, you create reliability. You create repeatable behavior. You create alignment between who you are and who you want to become. Think of the greatest leaders, athletes, creators, or innovators. None of them succeeded because they woke up on a good day and simply felt motivated. They succeeded because they created systems that allowed them to act with clarity even when motivation vanished. And it always vanishes. Motivation is emotional, systems are logical. Emotions fluctuate, systems persist. This is why people who rely on motivation always struggle with inconsistency. When they feel energized, they perform. When they feel tired, they collapse. But people who rely on systems don't need to negotiate with their moods. Their habits carry them. Their routines center them. Their structure directs them. When the world becomes chaotic, their system becomes their compass. Motivation might get you started, but it's your system that keeps you in motion. And in a world full of distractions, motion is everything. A system does not have to be complex to be powerful. In fact, the most effective systems are simple: a morning routine that grounds you, a dedicated time for focused work, a pattern for reflection, a method for planning your day. Simplicity makes consistency easier. Complexity fails because complexity relies on perfect conditions. Simple systems survive real life, stress, fatigue, setbacks, uncertainty. And that's the point. A system should protect your progress from the unpredictability of your feelings. When you wake up tired, your system should guide you. When you feel overwhelmed, your system should simplify your choices. When your mind is full of doubt, your system should anchor you. A good system doesn't require your best self to function. It supports you when you are not at your best. That's why systems outperform hope every single time. Building a system begins with understanding your values. If you don't know what matters to you, your system will collapse. Systems are not rigid rules, they are intentional designs that align with your why. When your system reflects your purpose, discipline becomes easier because you are not fighting against yourself. You are reinforcing your identity. For example, if you value growth, your system might include daily learning. If you value health, your system includes movement, sleep, and nutrition. If you value leadership, your system includes reflection and intentional communication. Your system becomes your personal infrastructure for living out your values. It helps eliminate decision fatigue because you know exactly what actions align with the person you want to become. Systems turn your values into behavior. Without them, your values remain ideas. With them, your values become your lifestyle. The difference between people who achieve extraordinary results and those who remain stuck isn't talent. It's structure. Talent gives you potential. Structure turns potential into performance. Structure is what keeps you moving when inspiration disappears. Structure is what removes the friction of decision-making. Structure is what transforms inconsistency into momentum. When you rely on hope, you wait for the right moment. When you rely on systems, you create the right moment. A structured approach to your goals means you don't waste energy improvising every day. Instead, every day follows a rhythm, a sequence, a pattern designed to lift you instead of drain you. The people who achieve the most aren't always the smartest. They are the most consistently aligned. They don't need dramatic changes. Their system creates small, stable improvements that compound into massive transformation. Consider how the human brain works. We are not built for constant decision-making. Every choice you make, what to eat, when to work, how to focus, drains cognitive energy. A system reduces that drain. It creates automatic patterns so your mind is free to think about what truly matters. That's why leaders with strong systems appear calm even in chaos. They are not scrambling. They are not guessing. They are executing. A structured routine becomes a psychological anchor. It reduces stress, increases clarity, and improves self-control. Systems also prevent you from self-sabotage because they interrupt impulsive behavior. When you have a system for your time, your actions, and your focus, procrastination has less room to grow. You don't need willpower for every task. You only need willpower to follow the system. And once the system becomes habitual, even that becomes effortless. One of the greatest advantages of systems is that they create predictability in an unpredictable world. You cannot control everything around you. Unexpected events, bad days, and emotional waves are part of life. But a system gives you stability when your environment becomes unstable. It is the safety net for your progress. Without a system, every setback feels like starting over. With a system, setbacks become temporary pauses, not permanent endings. Even when life hits hard, your system gives you something to return to, something familiar, something grounding, something that keeps you from drifting. Systems are the quiet discipline behind every resilient person. They give you strength long before you need it and clarity long after motivation fades. They are the preparation behind confidence, the discipline behind success, and the structure behind sustainable growth. Most people know what they want, but they don't know how they will consistently work toward it. That's why they stay stuck. They have a dream, but no system. They have ambition, but no structure. This creates a gap, the intention gap, between desire and action. Systems close that gap. A system breaks a big dream into small, repeatable behaviors. It makes your goal tangible. It makes progress measurable. It makes action predictable. For example, if your goal is to write a book, your system is not write when inspired. Your system is write 500 words every morning at 7 a.m. If your goal is fitness, your system is not work out when possible. Your system is exercise at 6 p.m. daily. Systems eliminate ambiguity. And the more you reduce ambiguity, the more you reduce excuses. Systems turn your dream into a schedule. There will always be people who resist structure because they believe it limits freedom. But the truth is the opposite. Structure creates freedom. When your actions follow a system, you free your mind from worry, stress, and indecision. You free yourself from the chaos of randomness. You free yourself from the emotional roller coaster of motivation. Freedom doesn't come from doing whatever you feel like. It comes from knowing what you must do and having a system that supports you in doing it. Structure gives you predictability, and predictability gives you peace. With a system, your time becomes intentional, your actions become meaningful, your progress becomes inevitable. The people who fear discipline misunderstand it. Discipline isn't punishment. Discipline is self-respect. A system isn't control. A system is empowerment. When you build systems, you build the framework for a life of freedom, clarity, and purpose. Hope has a place, but not as your foundation. Hope can inspire you, but it cannot guide you. Hope can motivate you, but it cannot sustain you. Systems, however, give you something to stand on. They help you navigate uncertainty. They ensure your actions reflect your purpose, not your mood. They make your growth consistent, your progress durable, and your habits intentional. You don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the strength of the systems you've built. So the real question is not, will you be ready when the moment comes? The real question is, what are you doing today to prepare for that moment? Build systems that lift you. Build routines that shape you. Build habits that reflect your identity. When you build systems, you build a future that doesn't depend on hope, but on who you choose to become every single day. Most people believe their performance is shaped in moments of visibility. On the stage, in the meeting, during the competition, or in front of the world. But the truth is far more intimate. Your performance is determined long before the world sees you. What you practice in private is exactly what emerges in public. You cannot act one way in the dark and expect brilliance in the light. Habits don't disappear in public spaces. They get exposed. Your preparation, or lack of it, becomes visible. The people we admire aren't great because they were born confident or talented. They're great because, behind the scenes, they built the repetitions, discipline, and mindset that later appeared effortless. What looks natural took years of intentional practice. The world only sees the moment. You live the preparation, and the quality of that preparation determines the quality of your performance. Private practice reveals your integrity. It shows what kind of person you are when there is no applause, no reward, no audience. Anyone can perform well when the world is watching, but true character is revealed in your alone moments. Do you show up for yourself even when nobody else will know the difference? Do you honor your commitments when there is no pressure forcing you to act? Self-discipline is built in silence. Growth happens in the unseen hours, the early mornings, the late nights, the quiet sacrifices. Public success is simply the echo of private effort. If you skip the work in private, you will struggle in public. If you remain committed in private, you will shine in public. The world doesn't shape your excellence. Your habits do. Your quiet consistency becomes your loudest strength. Think about elite athletes. When they compete, people admire their confidence, speed, and precision. But the true work was done long before the event. It was built in repetitive drills, disciplined recovery, early morning workouts, and countless hours studying techniques. The same is true for musicians, leaders, entrepreneurs, or creators. Public brilliance is a reflection of private dedication. You can't expect a great speech if you never rehearse. You can't expect strong leadership if you don't practice empathy daily. You can't expect success in your work if you cut corners when no one is watching. Excellence isn't a surprise. It's a result of deliberate, consistent practice that compounds over time. When you invest in private, your public performance becomes a natural extension of your preparation. If you want the world to see greatness, you must build it when the world isn't looking. Every habit you repeat trains your brain. Your mind doesn't differentiate between private and public behavior. It just reinforces whatever you practice. If you practice procrastination, your brain becomes better at delaying. If you practice discipline, your brain becomes better at committing. If you practice speaking your truth, you gain confidence. If you practice avoiding discomfort, you reinforce fear. Your brain is always learning from your actions, creating patterns that show up later, often when you least expect them. That's why private behavior becomes public reality. The moment you face pressure, your brain defaults to whatever it has rehearsed most, not what you wished you practiced, but what you actually practiced. You don't rise to high expectations, you fall to deeply ingrained habits. So the habits you repeat in private become the tools you rely on in every public challenge. There's a dangerous myth that you'll figure it out when the moment comes. But pressure doesn't create ability. It exposes preparation. If you haven't built the skill, pressure magnifies the gap. If you have built the skill, pressure amplifies your excellence. The moments that matter most, the interview, the presentation, the competition, the opportunity, become mirrors that reflect how you've been living. You cannot cram confidence. You cannot fake consistency. You cannot improvise discipline. These qualities are earned through repetition long before the moment arrives. When you are prepared, you feel calm because you trust your habits. When you aren't prepared, you feel fear because you have nothing solid to fall back on. The moment doesn't make you rise. The moment reveals who you already are, and who you are is shaped by what you practice daily. private practice is also where you build resilience. When no one is watching, you have the freedom to fail, adjust, and try again without judgment. These quiet failures strengthen your ability to adapt under pressure. The people who seem unshakable in public are not fearless. They are familiar with discomfort. They have faced struggle behind closed doors. They have stumbled, corrected, improved, and tried again. By the time the world sees them, they've already lived through the challenges privately. That's why they appear calm. That's why they appear confident. They are not performing, they are simply expressing habits they built alone. Resilience isn't built on good days, it's built on difficult ones. And the private arena gives you the space to grow through difficulty without fear of embarrassment. The stronger your private resilience, the stronger your public presence. Your private practice is also where authenticity is born. In a world obsessed with image, many people perform versions of themselves that don't match their private behavior. But when public behavior and private habits are misaligned, the gap eventually becomes visible. People can sense inconsistency. Real leadership, real confidence, and real influence come from alignment. When your private values and public actions match, this alignment creates trust, both in yourself and from others. When you know you've done the work privately, you don't need to pretend publicly. You don't need to exaggerate your strengths or hide your weaknesses. You show up as yourself with clarity and integrity. Authenticity doesn't come from trying to impress others. It emerges naturally from consistent private discipline. And when your private habits align with your public values, you become a person others trust. And a person you trust yourself. One of the most important reasons private practice matters is because the world moves too fast for you to think your way through every challenge. In high-pressure moments, your body and mind rely on instinct. Instinct is simply deeply rehearsed behavior. It's the automatic response built through repetition. When you practice discipline daily, discipline becomes instinct. When you practice focus, focus becomes instinct. When you practice patience, patience becomes instinct. Instinct is your performance autopilot, and you control what gets programmed. That's why your habits matter. What you repeatedly do when no one is watching becomes the default behavior that shows up when you don't have time to think. You don't need to hope you'll stay calm in pressure when you've practiced calmness every day. Private practice programs excellence into your instincts so you can lean on it when it matters. The truth is simple. If you want to change your public performance, you must first change your private habits. You cannot show up confidently if your private actions are filled with hesitation. You cannot show up strong if your private life is inconsistent. You cannot show up disciplined if your private environment is chaotic. Your private world shapes your public identity. So instead of asking, "How do I perform better?" ask a better question, "How do I live better when no one is watching?" The answer is found in your routines, your mindset, your effort, your consistency. It's found in waking up when you said you would, doing the work no one sees, choosing the harder option, and honoring your values in silence. If your private self is strong, your public self becomes unstoppable. What you practice in private is not just preparation, it is identity. You are training yourself for the person you will be when pressure, opportunity, or adversity arrives. The world will only see the outcome, but you will always know the truth. Your performance is built in the dark long before it shines in the light. So build habits you're proud of. Practice skills that matter. Show up for yourself even when no one else is watching. Become the person who earns confidence, not the person who acts it. Become the person who builds discipline, not the person who imitates it. Let your private actions reflect the future you want. Because one day, the world will see exactly what you've been practicing. And in that moment, you won't need to rise to the occasion. Your habits will carry you. Your private practice becomes your public power. We often imagine success as a dramatic moment, a breakthrough, a turning point, a bold leap that changes everything. But real success doesn't arrive through one big decision. It arrives through hundreds of small ones. Tiny habits shape giant outcomes because they work quietly, consistently, and powerfully in the background of your life. They don't demand attention. They don't feel extraordinary. They feel simple, sometimes even insignificant. but that's their power. Tiny habits are sustainable. Anyone can repeat them. They don't rely on bursts of motivation. They rely on repetition. Just like a drop of water can carve stone over time, small actions can reshape your entire identity. You don't become great by accident. You become great through tiny habits that accumulate into character, discipline, focus, and momentum. Success is built not in a moment, but in a pattern, repeated day after day. The human brain loves patterns. It thrives on repetition. What you repeatedly do becomes what you instinctively do. That is why small habits are so powerful. They transform your identity gradually without overwhelming you. You don't need to overhaul your entire life. You just need to improve your daily patterns. If you read 10 pages a day, that becomes 300 pages a month. 3 books. If you walk for 20 minutes daily, that becomes 600 minutes a month. 10 hours of movement. If you save a little money each day, you build financial security over time. Tiny habits compound just like interest. At first, you barely notice progress, but the compound effect is slow, steady, and relentless. Over time, small habits produce results that look impossible from the starting point. It's never about doing more at once. It's about doing a little consistently. One of the reasons people fail to build lasting change is because they aim too big too fast. They set massive goals without creating small behaviors to support them. They rely on motivation instead of systems. Big goals are inspiring, but they are not sustainable without small habits. You cannot transform your life with one giant effort, but you can transform your life with small actions repeated consistently. If you want to become strong, start with a few minutes of exercise. If you want to become confident, start with one small act of courage a day. If you want to become disciplined, start with keeping tiny promises to yourself. It is not the size of the habit that matters. It is the direction. Small habits build momentum. Momentum builds belief. Belief builds identity. And once your identity shifts, big change becomes inevitable. Small is powerful. Tiny habits are also easier to implement because they don't trigger resistance. Your brain resists drastic change, but it welcomes small adjustments. This is why trying to change everything at once usually fails. You burn out, feel overwhelmed, or get discouraged when perfection slips. But tiny habits bypass that psychological resistance. They feel achievable. They feel light. They feel doable even on stressful days. And once you start doing something small consistently, you build trust in yourself. You prove that you can follow through. That trust becomes motivation. You no longer need willpower to act. You have confidence. Confidence is not built through grand gestures. It is built through small wins. Every tiny habit you keep is a vote for the person you want to become. Each day, each repetition, each small action strengthens your identity more than any big goal ever could. The real magic of tiny habits lies in how they compound internally, not just externally. They reshape the way you think. Every time you follow through on a small habit, you reinforce self-discipline. You strengthen self-respect. You remind yourself, I am a person who follows through. Most people lose trust in themselves because they constantly break big promises. But tiny habits reverse that cycle. They create a pattern of integrity. You begin to expect consistency from yourself. You begin to recognize your own capability. You begin to appreciate the power of gradual growth rather than instant results. And when your self-belief grows, your ambition grows with it. Suddenly, goals that once felt overwhelming become manageable because you've built the internal architecture to support them. You don't force progress anymore. It becomes a natural extension of your improved identity. Consider how tiny habits affect every area of your life. One small habit of gratitude improves your mindset. One small habit of planning improves your productivity. One small habit of learning improves your intelligence. One small habit of listening improves your relationships. None of these habits are dramatic by themselves, but the transformation they create over time becomes undeniable. It is the accumulation that matters. You cannot build a legacy in a day, but you can build one habit today. You can strengthen one value. You can make one better choice. People who achieve extraordinary outcomes are not extraordinary. They are consistent. They understand that greatness is a daily investment, not a sudden event. Tiny habits anchor you. They guide your behavior even when life becomes chaotic. They ensure that you always move forward, even if the steps are small. Most people underestimate small habits because they expect immediate results. We live in a world addicted to quick transformations, instant success, and overnight breakthroughs. But meaningful change doesn't happen instantly. It grows slowly, quietly, internally. Until one day, people call it sudden success. What they see is the result. What they miss is the tiny habits that built it over years. A writer doesn't produce a masterpiece through inspiration alone. They produce it through daily writing. A leader doesn't earn respect overnight. They earn it through consistent behavior. A disciplined person isn't born disciplined. They become disciplined through small acts of self-control. If you ignore tiny habits, you ignore the building blocks of greatness. If you honor tiny habits, you accelerate your growth in ways big efforts can never match. Small is not insignificant. Small is strategic. Tiny habits also have a ripple effect. When you improve one small area of your life, other areas begin to improve naturally. For example, a small habit of waking up earlier may lead to more time for reflection, which leads to better decisions, which leads to improved productivity and reduced stress. A small habit of reading might spark new ideas that reshape your career. A small habit of exercise improves energy, which improves focus, which improves performance. Tiny habits influence your environment, your mindset, your energy, and your choices. They create a chain reaction of positive outcomes. This ripple effect is one of the reasons small habits are more powerful than big goals. Big goals require big effort. Tiny habits require small effort, but create expansive results. They are the quiet catalyst for major transformation. Tiny habits succeed because they are consistent, and consistency is more powerful than intensity. Intensity burns bright and fades quickly. Consistency burns steadily and lasts forever. Anyone can work hard for a day. Very few people can work consistently for months or years. But tiny habits make consistency easier because they reduce friction. Instead of needing courage, willpower, or perfect conditions, you simply follow a small behavior. And small behaviors are repeatable. That repeatability is what builds mastery. Mastery is not achieved through rare moments of extreme effort. It is achieved through daily habits performed without fanfare. Every repetition strengthens your neural pathways. Every repetition improves your skill. Every repetition moves you one step closer to the person you want to become. In the long run, consistency always outperforms intensity. Tiny habits make consistency possible. Your future is not shaped by your dreams alone. It is shaped by the small behaviors you repeat every day. The question is not, what do you want to achieve? But, what habits are you willing to practice consistently? Tiny habits create momentum. Momentum creates belief. Belief creates identity. And identity creates transformation. You don't need to change everything today. You only need to change one small thing and do it consistently. That is how big lives are built, one tiny habit at a time. When you focus on small, repeatable actions, you take control of your future. You design your identity. You shape your destiny. Tiny habits may feel small, but they build the foundation for giant outcomes. So choose your habits wisely. They are the quiet architects of the person you are becoming. Small steps, repeated daily, create extraordinary change. We often believe our habits are built solely from willpower, discipline, and personal strength. But in reality, our environment shapes our behavior far more than we realize. The spaces we live in, the people we surround ourselves with, the routines we walk through every day, they send countless invisible signals that influence our choices. Simon Sinek teaches that behavior doesn't emerge from desire alone. It emerges from design. If you want stronger habits, don't rely only on motivation. Instead, build an environment where the right habits become the natural outcome. Make it easier to do what aligns with your values and harder to slip into what distracts you. You don't rise to the level of your inspiration, you fall to the level of your environment. And the moment you take responsibility for shaping the world around you, you take control of the habits that will ultimately define your success. Think about the habits you struggle with the most. Are they truly a result of weak willpower, or are they simply the default behaviors your environment makes easy? If your workspace is cluttered, distraction becomes natural. If your home is filled with unhealthy food, bad eating becomes effortless. If your friends normalize laziness, success becomes something you must fight for rather than something supported by those around you. Simon Sinek reminds us that leaders create environments where people can thrive. And your first responsibility is to become the leader of your own life. You must design surroundings that reflect the standards you want to live by. Instead of forcing discipline, remove friction. Instead of battling temptation, reduce exposure. When you design the world around you with intention, your habits become less of a battle and more of a natural rhythm that pulls you toward growth. Environments don't just influence habits, they reinforce identities. If your surroundings tell you that you're a person who is disorganized, unfocused, or inconsistent, you start acting accordingly. But when you intentionally shape the spaces around you to align with who you want to become, your identity begins to shift in that direction. A desk arranged for deep work makes you feel like a disciplined professional. A gym bag placed by the door signals that you are someone who prioritizes health. A journal on your pillow whispers that reflection is your nightly ritual. These small cues create identity loops. Your environment mirrors your desired identity, and your behavior follows suit. This is why the most powerful habit change doesn't start with trying harder. It starts with rearranging your world. Your environment should not remind you of your weaknesses, but strengthen the belief in who you have the potential to be. Simon Sinek often talks about creating cultures that reinforce purpose, trust, and clarity. You can apply the same philosophy to your personal environment. The question is simple: does your environment support your why? If your goal is growth, does your daily setup encourage learning? If your purpose is to lead, does your environment push you toward responsibility and self-awareness? If your dream is to build something meaningful, does your physical space reduce noise and increase focus? When your environment contradicts your purpose, friction rises. When your environment aligns with your purpose, momentum builds. This is why intentional design is the most underestimated tool in developing strong habits. Don't wait for your environment to change on its own. Make deliberate choices. Rearrange your room, adjust what you see first in the morning, change the people you spend time with. Your environment should be a constant reminder of your mission. The people around you are also part of your environment, and they are often the biggest influence on your habits. If you surround yourself with people who believe in excellence, who take responsibility, who chase growth, you will rise with them. But if your circle normalizes excuses, procrastination, and inconsistency, you will fall to that standard without noticing. Simon Sinek says, "We become the people we are because of the people around us." And this is especially true with habits. Look at your closest relationships. Do they inspire discipline or convenience? Progress or comfort? Integrity or shortcuts? Habits are contagious. The standards of the people you admire will quietly become your own. You do not need to cut everyone out of your life. You just need to intentionally choose who influences your definition of normal. Your environment is either pulling you upward or holding you back. Choose wisely. Designing your environment is not about perfection. It's about intention. You don't need a perfect room, perfect schedule, or perfect group of friends. You just need small environmental cues that steer you toward your values. Place your goals where you can see them. Put your phone in another room when you work. Keep only the tools that support your growth within reach. These changes are simple, but they have long-term impact. Motivation fades. Discipline fluctuates. But environment is constant, and that consistency is what shapes habits. Simon Sinek's work has always emphasized that culture beats strategy. In your personal life, environment beats motivation. Don't depend on emotional highs or bursts of inspiration. Instead, build a world where the right habits happen naturally, because the wrong habits have nowhere to thrive. Small environmental shifts create big behavioral transformations. And these transformations become the foundation of your success. We often underestimate how much energy we waste resisting the pulls of an unhealthy environment. Every temptation requires willpower. Every distraction demands focus. Every negative influence drains motivation. But when you shape your environment correctly, you eliminate these silent energy leaks. You no longer fight against yourself. You free your mind to focus on purposeful work, meaningful relationships, and long-term growth. Simon Sinek teaches that leadership is about removing obstacles so people can perform at their best. Apply this to your habits. Remove obstacles so you can perform at your best. Replace the television remote with a book. Replace clutter with clarity. Replace noise with quiet. Instead of forcing good habits, allow them. The goal isn't to become stronger than your environment. It's to make your environment stronger than your excuses. When the world around you is designed for success, success becomes the path of least resistance. Remember that habits are not built in moments of inspiration. They are built in the structure of your daily life. Your environment creates the structure. Want to read more? Keep books in every room. Want to exercise more? Keep your gear visible. Want to think deeper? Build a space where reflection feels natural. Habits thrive when the environment reduces friction. Habits die when the environment adds friction. Simon Sinek reminds us that systems shape behavior more than intention does. Your environment is your system, and systems don't lie. If you design a system built for growth, you will grow. If you design a system built for distraction, you will drift. Instead of questioning your discipline, question your environment. Instead of blaming yourself for inconsistency, examine the world you've built around you. Your environment is not neutral. It is constantly shaping who you are becoming. Design it with purpose. An intentional environment creates momentum, and momentum is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. Once good habits begin to stack, they reinforce one another. Clean space leads to clear thinking. Clear thinking leads to better decisions. Better decisions lead to stronger discipline. Strong discipline leads to meaningful progress. And meaningful progress fuels motivation. Simon Sinek often says that success is not an event, but a process. A slow accumulation of intentional choices. Your environment accelerates that process by eliminating the friction that normally slows you down. When the world around you is aligned with your values, your habits become almost automatic. You no longer ask, "How do I stay motivated?" The question becomes irrelevant. Your environment keeps you moving, keeps you grounded, keeps you focused. It becomes the silent partner in your growth. A partner that supports you even on days when you don't feel strong. In the end, the environment you build becomes the foundation for the habits that either lift you or limit you. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You rise to the level of the systems you build, and you fall to the level of the habits those systems produce. Simon Sinek teaches that leadership is about creating conditions where greatness becomes possible. Create those conditions for yourself. Shape your surroundings so they reflect your purpose. Organize your space so it pulls you toward growth. Choose relationships that inspire resilience. Build routines that make excellence the norm. When your environment is intentionally designed, your habits become a natural extension of your identity. And when your habits align with your purpose, you become unstoppable. This is the power of environment. It doesn't push you toward greatness. It builds a path where greatness becomes the easiest step forward.